Well, that official art is going to give me nightmares. Seriously, what was Game Freak thinking? This is the creepiest one yet. What the fuck? Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here, and this out of you, Celesteela. The pun doesn't quite do it for me, and it's still kind of hard to pronounce smoothly, so I'm just going to call it Sea Dog. Sea Dog is going to be a steel flying typing, which is actually absolutely amazing. That steel resists so many things that with the flying typing, you have two weaknesses in the end. Fire and electric. Just imagine Skarmory. Like, Skarmory is so good as well. So we don't have a ground weakness. It actually becomes an immunity, and we have a poison immunity as well. So we can't get toxic poisoned except against Salandit or whatever. But overall, against 99% of the Pokemon, 99.9% of the Pokemon or whatever, we're going to be doing just fine. Like, we can't get stalled, and we're also going to be tanky. And look at all these things that resist. Like, Sea Dog is just so good. Looking at it offensively, I mean, Steel is just good offensively. Flying, not so much, and we're going to be more of a tanky Pokemon as we break down into the stats, but yo, the balance on those stats is almost as freaky. No, nothing is as freaky as this Pokemon. Either way, like, I'm getting so, I can't, it's such a weird Pokemon, but let's try to focus on the stats. 97 on the hit points, 103 on defense, 101 on the special defense. It's just balanced. And then it has 101 on the attack, 107 on special attack. I would have preferred to see, like, the attack or something. Like, I would have preferred to see one of those stats get stripped away and not be as good. Actually, since this is a ridiculous heavy slam Pokemon, I would have rather seen like 60 on the special attack, 20 more in each defense or something. But we gotta make do with what we've got, and it's still pretty strong. Like, a lot of Pokemon never even get close to 90 on the hit points, or 90s on the defenses, so we go and past that, and then we stay really balanced with a lot of tankiness. So comparing it to some other Pokemon is going to be what we have to look at. Either way, it's going to be a fairly consistent and tanky Pokemon. Heading over into Cerebi, we're going to see this Pokemon's moveset, and let's also go and take a moment to see how ridiculous this Pokemon's weight is. 999.9 kilograms. It maxes out the scale. This thing is an absolute beast of a Pokemon, and does it go and get the heavy slam? It gets the heavy slam, so that's max damage on almost everything. So tons of damage for Sea Dog. Also, weirdly enough, it's like a flying Pokemon, and it's got that steel, but it gets grass coverage. We're sitting on the Giga Drain, the Seed Bomb, the Leech Seed. Alright, we already know that that's going to be used right there. Gets the Wide Guard for a little bit of supportive coverage, and it's going to get Flamethrower. So we've seen with the other Ultra Beasts that they'll either get Ice Beam or Thunderbolt or something like that, but here's where the Flamethrower goes, into the Steel Pokemon, so that way it can also become a Steel Killer, interestingly enough. Also gets the Flame Charge, so Fire-type attack to boost speed. Maybe might work out in some kind of way. I don't know, this Pokemon is kind of crazy. It also gets the Smart Strike, so Smart Strike is going to not have any accuracy, bypasses accuracy check, never misses. 70 base power stab is actually pretty awesome, so if your opponent's trying to go for evasion or something like that, the Smart Strike might actually be some tech to run, and overall just the moveset is good, but for a flying tank Pokemon, does not get the roost, so people are upset about that, but I don't think it really matters in the end. Hopping into Pokemon Showdown, we're going to be running Sea Dog as a ridiculous sweeping Pokemon, and it's going to be with the Autotomize, and it just all works out in the end somehow. So Adamant Nature, putting in some speed investment, that way we can double our speed with Autotomize, and then we go and crush everything with the Heavy Slam. But wait, Verlisify, you're an idiot. Autotomize causes it to lose weight, therefore Heavy Slam does less damage. No, that's not how it is at all. You lose 100 kilograms, and Heavy Slam doesn't care, because Heavy Slam is based off of the weight ratio. So as long as the opponent is 20% or less than your total weight, you're still going to be doing 120 base power into the stab, into insane amounts of damage. This is actually why Heavy Slam Wailord is viable. Wailord is just so heavy that it does 120 base power to a lot of Pokemon, and therefore is the same amount of damage as a stab waterfall at 120 base power as well. But Celesteela is a bit different. That we can take that 899 kilograms, and then we could divide it by 5, and we're still out beasting a lot of the Pokemon, like Mega Salamence. We get to hit that Pokemon for full damage. We get to hit all those Pokemon up until about this range right here, and then we just get into some, like, ludicrously heavy, weird, and legendary Pokemon. But for the most part, these are not Pokemon we are going to be encountering or things that we should worry about with the Heavy Slam, because then we're getting to like other Rock and Steel type Pokemon. But even like if we didn't Autotomize, that only pushes the range up by like 20 or something. So it really doesn't affect too much when we Autotomize. So now we're outspeeding everything. We're still getting a ridiculous 120 base power move, and then we just go and bring the Iron Plate, because this is one of those really weird scenarios where you do not want the life orb because you're supposed to be kind of tanky. You kind of want to hang in there and survive and stuff, that you are tanky enough to just survive and go for the autotomize and then blow everything up and maybe even survive some other hits. But if you're life orbing yourself down, that's going to reduce your sweeping power. Iron Plate, that's really all that you need. Your biggest damage is going to be on that heavy slam. You're relying on that stab. You're relying on just boosting it as much as possible. So sacrificing the 10% from the heavy slam is not going to lose you out too many KOs. And then Seed Bomb and Earthquake, you're really only throwing these out if those are super effective hits or for coverage anyway. So the life orb doesn't really matter. That you just want to be as tanky and sustaining as possible. And now it's finally time to take a look at the stats. So this is why we have 172 EVs in the speed. At level 50, after we autotomize, we will outspeed 135 base speed Pokemon, so that's really all we need. Then the rest goes into hit points. We get tanky, GG right there. But I also want to compare it to Pokemon like Skarmory. Skarmory is actually a little tankier defensively, but a lot less tanky special defensively. So we're going to have a lot of tankiness by comparison. And then Cresselia, I want to bring up Cresselia because, alright, this is what made me doubt Seadog initially, is that Cresselia, it has sustain, and it's also a much tankier Pokemon. But in the end, like, Celesteela does different things. Like, oh, it has that sweeping set. It can sustain in its own different ways. So, not as tanky as the Cresselia, but it has other offensive options, and it just does some really weird stuff, and finds a lot of ridiculous damage. I was also looking into some other movesets. Doubles, you might want to run it special. That 107 on that special attack isn't bad, but there's a lot of things you can do here. I was looking at the Quiet Nature. That way you could maybe just go for like a Trick Room set with some special coverage. You have Wide Guard for that support, so Wide Guard, tanky, special attacking Pokemon could work out as well. Or you could also mix in another set that there's a stall set for Seadog because, like, the Leech Seed. Why? It can Leech Seed! It can Leech Seed. So, you know how Ferrothorn has a 4 times weakness to fire and a 2 times weakness to fighting? Well, you just have a 2 times weakness to electricity and fire. So, you have less things to worry about than a Ferrothorn, and you're still a really tanky Pokemon, and you get more damage on the Heavy Slam. You can Toxic, or you can Ingrain. Like, that's kind of the weird thing that's going on right there, is that if you Ingrain, you actually might be able to, like, just get absurd amounts of sustain. That you're getting a quarter of your hit points, like, just every turn, and then that means if you protect, you're getting half of your hit points every time your opponent gets a chance to attack you. So Ingrain Leftovers, boom, that's an 8th right there. Leech Seed, that's an 8th right there, and then you just protect through it, and then you just chip in the Heavy Slam damage. And that is going to absolutely make your opponent's day difficult. With this set, I was thinking we go with a Careful Nature, max out the special defense, max out the hit points, because really defensively, it's not as bad. That we have to worry about electric attacks, which are mostly going to be special, and fire attacks, which are probably going to be like Flamethrower and Fire Blast. Even though I know Flare Blitz and some physical fire attacks are a thing, I'm just more thinking about it like that. Other than that, though, we can, like, cut some things and balance it around a bit. We are going in that Careful Nature, so maybe we could be a bit more fair to our defenses right there. Or instead of the Ingrain, you can just run Iron Defense. And now, things get effed up. So we haven't really worried about this with the Ultra Beast guide so far, is that, you know, we're just doing offensive things to boost offensive things, and then we're getting offensive things. But defensive boosting and other technical boosting while competing with other stats really doesn't matter with Beast Boost. So right here, increases users' highest stat by 1 stage after knocking out Pokemon. It does not take into account modifiers caused by status, items, or moves. So, what that means is we can run the Iron Defense. And if we boost with the Iron Defense and then score KO, it's still going to boost our special defense. Therefore, we are going to have almost 500 defense, almost 500 special defense, and still ridiculous amounts of health and sustain and stuff. That it's okay to give up the Ingrain if we want to run the Iron Defense, because the effective health we're getting from our tankiness is going to be way more than 1/16 HP per turn, and then we can just keep snowballing on top of that. So that was actually one of the big things. I was wondering, like, oh, if we're running the Iron Defense, does that mean we have to score a KO, make sure our special defense goes up, then use the Iron Defense? But no, there's no, like, race between the stats. That whatever straight up highest stat that you just throw that Pokemon into, Beast Boost is going to keep boosting that stat, and it's not going to care about these stat modifiers. So yeah, you can Iron Defense against a physical Pokemon, you can Heavy Slam it, and then you gain Special Defense, and then you just wait for your opponent to go and bring in that special attacking Pokemon. Now you're already up against it, and you use the Iron Defense, and then you refresh the Leech Seed, you protect, you gain almost half your health back, and then you just go, why is this Pokemon so broken? And then that also means it works with Seadog on the Autotomize. So just in case you were saying, well, if I Autotomize, then that puts my speed stat higher than my attack, so I'm not gaining attack. No! according to Bulbapedia, according to the flavor text of how this works, that's it. You just get to autotomize, and then you infinitely +1 your attack until everything dies. So now we just rightfully need to go to the damage calculators and see how crazy this gets. So we have the setup right here. This is a Garchomp. Oh, Garchomp doesn't get to use Earthquake against us. Fantastic. So we already get to see some really scary things right here, because there's the Heavy Slam. That's 2/3 of Garchomp's health, which means if we are at +1, we have an incredibly high chance of KOing a Garchomp if we are at the +1. If not, we're at the +2, and we can just set up, like, even as like a 3-hit KO Pokemon on Sea-Dog right here. Garchomp doesn't have anything to do against us, so we can just autotomize, Heavy Slam it twice, and then we can continue to sweep. If we already have the +1, well, that's the scary thing about Beast Boost. It's going to keep going. So now we, like, say we knock out something, they're like, I'll just bring in my Garchomp. Maybe it's, you know, Fire Blast Garchomp or something like that. It's going to try to deal with us. Heavy Slam. Garchomp goes down. Now we're at +2. So then what I want to do was actually take a look at what can stop Sea-Dog, because the point of damage calculations is to see the Pokemon's highs and lows, to see what it has to worry about, and the answer is not much. That Incineroar is quite a threat. It has the Intimidate, and also does bring up the thing that, as a Steel-type Pokemon, Fire Pokemon do threaten us. That Arcanine, you know, Intimidate Fire Pokemon are also pretty bad. Any Intimidate Pokemon will slow down our gains right there, but if the opponent's trying to, like, switch into the Intimidate Pokemon, then they might have to worry about something, because if we're already at like a +1, Intimidate comes in, we can still 2-shot on the Earthquake and stuff, and depending on how the switches and prediction goes, it gets pretty weird. But Incineroar can one-shot us through our incredible tankiness with the Flare Blitz. Even at like 252 hit points, we are still going to go down, and that's without a Life Orb. So whatever Incineroar is running, it can respond to us pretty good. And then, like, even with, like, Earthquake and +1s and +2s, it's just not enough to get over the Intimidate. So that's a good... We actually found a use for Incineroar. Congratulations to us right here. But that was thinking about Talonflame. Talonflame. Well, remember, we're going to be doing Autotomize. So if we already have Autotomize, and say we already have a +1, because if Talonflame comes into us and we're at +0, we just outright KO it. So we're Heavy Slamming, they're like, I'm just going to bring in Talonflame to wall it. Boom, that's 50%. We outspeed, boom, that's 50% again. Hey, we're at +1. And even at +0, if we have Stealth Rocks up, Talonflame can't do anything to us, and we still outspeed the Talonflame, because we're outspeeding 135 base speed Pokemon. Talonflame is only 126. It doesn't matter what Talonflame is doing, and it can't use the Brave Bird because we resist that. So it's not like Gale Wings is going to be a factor in this situation. We're just that good, and if we have Stealth Rocks up, that's a KO. So we put up the Stealth Rocks, and yeah, 81% chance KO after Stealth Rocks. So it's a lot of these weird 81% numbers. Either way, incredibly likely. If we're at the +1, it's just going to be even better from there. If we're at +2, well, that's what we're just taking to naturally KO the Talonflame. So yeah, like that's kind of what we're dealing with. The Xurkitree. What about Xurkitree? Well, if we're at +1, Xurkitree, it gets KO'd by our Earthquake, just straight up like that. So that's another thing to consider. If they bring in Xurkitree as a revenge Pokemon, we win. This is why we run the Earthquake. Heavy Slam, that could be the greatest option, but Earthquake's super effective damage. It's the coverage that we need. Get wrecked right there. And even then, like, the Thunderbolt will be enough to take us out, so I accidentally have +1 on the defense. So Thunderbolt, it can come in, and we still outspeed Xurkitree. Because, say they manually switch it in, Heavy Slam does a good amount of damage, and then we can pick it off with the Earthquake. Even at +0, that, okay, they think that Xurkitree is going to be able to resist our Heavy Slam, well then we outspeed them and Earthquake it, and it's GG right there, because most Xurkitree are going to be running like Scarf Modest. Now if it is Timid, I'm still not sure what to make of the Timid Xurkitree. I feel like we're giving up too much damage. It's not going to be that great overall, but it has one use, and that's taking out the Autotomize. So it can outspeed us and do things like that. Actually, wait a second. What happens if we have an Adamant Nature? And what happens if we go 252? Actually, okay, now things just got weird. Because Xurkitree is going to have a 222 speed on that Timid Nature, but if we're running Adamant, we can actually speed creep it. So if you want to give up the hit point investment, which could actually be a thing, like if we're running 252, then that means not even Timid Xurkitree will touch us, and then we're still in the same matchups right here, and it doesn't really matter because, like, we're giving up a small amount of our effective tankiness for those boosting, so maybe just maxing out the speed, not even worrying about just 135 base speed Pokemon, but getting even a broader spectrum up to, like, 80 base speed Pokemon that are Scarfed that could potentially threaten us. Even, like, look at this. Nothing else is going to have a Scarf and a 173 special attack, hitting us with a super effective stab boosted hit. So we're pretty safe from a lot of things that are going on right now, and that just shows, like, we still deal with this Pokemon even at +0 in a lot of situations on a switch in, and then things just get scarier. +0, 75 base hit points, 70 base defense, straight up one hit KO. That's what we're looking for. That's the range where Sea-Dog will just automatically start the snowball and win. That if you're going up against Pokemon like this and it just doesn't have anything to do with you, Autotomize, Heavy Slam, free KO. So against most sweepers that don't have any way of resisting us, it's going to be that bad. Actually, I'm wondering what happens if we bring in like Pheromosa. Because Pheromosa doesn't really have those super effective hits on us, and it does have a solid amount of stats, but I mean, the Heavy Slam is just an absolute body onto this Pokemon, because at 71-37, it does not end well for the Pheromosa as we are doing our setup right here. And yeah, even, okay, let's go and like, okay, so what happens? So we got that Adamant Nature. We rocking it right there. We on that 252. We go into the Life Orb. We go into that high jump kick. Is it going to be enough? Nope. So we can set up Autotomize, outspeed the Pheromosa, one shot on the Heavy Slam, done. If they try to, if they see, like, okay, this is for both sides. If you see this Pokemon and you think it's about ready to set up, don't think I'm going to go and respond to it with the Pheromosa, because it just outspeeds you. That you can't switch into it on that Autotomized turn. That you just have to hope your opponent doesn't bring it in at this time, or else you die. And even then, the tanky set still feels ridiculous. 500 defense, 500 special defense with a 97 base hit points. That's so dumb. That's so dumb in the end. Also, that was, I believe, at level 100 on that tanky set, so maybe the stats might be a little more skewed. So here's level 50 for you guys if you want to see it. But yeah, this Pokemon's just so gross and full of damage. I didn't, like, you see the stats, you're like, hundreds on everything. I mean, it's like a mythical Pokemon, I guess. It's like a standard legendary, maybe. But nope, it's broken. It's busted, it's freaking terrifying. It just ruins everything. It's so heavy, Autotomize doesn't even matter. It just, no! Ah, it's so good! Hope you guys enjoyed the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching. Sweet dreams.